What can I say? I lacked common sense and got married. Hell, here I was, a 45-year-old man married to a 22-year-old woman. What the hell was I thinking? Most people would probably say that I was clearly not thinking with my head, but this is not entirely true, although this was the case. I'm rich and wealthy by some standards, but most people don't know how much I'm actually worth. I dropped out of school and eventually got my JED. My mom and dad divorced at an early age. I have one brother and two sisters. Dad left us with nothing. Mom worked as a waitress and tried her best to provide us with a decent life. We rented an old house outside the city, which was in rather dilapidated condition. I felt so sorry for my mother. I came home every evening and prayed that everything would work out. I immediately decided to help her. I sold newspapers and worked at the local grocery store to help my mother, but it wasn't enough. I dropped out of school my senior year. Mom argued with me, but she knew that I was also doing this to help the family. I was 18 at the time and got a job in a truck warehouse. I was a really smart kid when I applied myself. I helped load trucks 10 hours a day and made a pretty decent salary. My mother and I had enough money to live a fairly normal life. My brother and sisters may not have been dressed the best, but their clothes were neat and clean. Mom was one hell of a frugal shopper. Things started to look up for us. I worked in a warehouse and learned everything I could about trucks and warehousing. One day, I decided to take a truck driving course. After I got my CDL license, the money got even better. I became a truck driver, and whenever I was not on the road, I helped load. I was making really good money. I started putting half of my check into a savings account and gave the other half to my mom. My younger brother received a full scholarship to a local college playing football. My sisters, who were still teenagers, were twins and always dressed alike. I felt like their father, even though I was only a few years older. Life went on, and eventually my sisters got married and started their own families. My brother received an economics degree and ran a local business. For me, I started buying trucks. Here I was a 25-year-old guy who owned a fleet of 12 trucks. Of course, I owed them, but I had drivers who brought me money. I bought more trucks, and eventually I had my own terminal. They called me a truck driver. What most people didn't know was that I had become partners in other companies over the years. In many of them, I owned 50% of the shares. I didn't have to own the business, but I had a lot of control over it. I was a silent partner, so to speak, but when I spoke, people listened. When I turned 30, I decided to take the JED. When I received it, my sisters threw me a big party. Various aunts, uncles, and cousins were present. I often wondered where they were when Mom needed them, but now that we were financially stable, they were here. Now I was just glad to have family nearby. I wasn't a big offender. I loved my family and knew they cared about me. After we all separated, Mom remarried a nice gentleman. He worked in one of my businesses, but did not know that I was the controlling shareholder. In fact, all my relatives work in factories, offices, and terminals in which I have invested heavily. I was going to make sure my family members didn't get fired. I didn't show off my possessions, but people knew that the terminal and some of the trucks belonged to me. I started allowing my drivers to buy trucks if they wanted, less maintenance for me. Well, I think you get the money picture here. Now about my sex life. It was good. When I started working, I dated several local girls. I didn't intend to get married. It just wasn't for me. As if I had already created a family, my brothers and sister. I was happy with my life and could find a woman almost any time. My dilemma has always been, did they want me for themselves or for financial reward? If I just dated them, it wouldn't be a big deal. My sisters were always worried about me. They knew I was dating but decided it was time for me to settle down. Every time I turned around, they had dates for me. I dated a few women that I was close to. Marrying them was simply not an option. I kept in pretty good shape. I worked out regularly in the gym. I didn't have muscles or anything, but for a guy my age, my muscles were strong. I loved watching the women train. Their tight asses and sports bras were enough. I've had sex with more than one woman at the gym. I have slept with them in the sauna, in the pool, in the shower, and even in the spa. It's good that these places had powerful filtration systems. I've dated more women than I care to count. If I found out they were married, I stayed away from them. I had several married women, but then I did not know that they were married. After that, I had nothing to do with them. I believe in monogamy for a married person. Maybe that's why I've never been married before. About a year and a half ago, I came across this tiny woman. She worked in one of the businesses that interested me. Of course, she didn't know that. We met at one of the many Christmas parties I attended. Needless to say, I took her home to her trailer and had sex. Maybe I just got lucky. I asked Shelby if she had taken the pills. She told me yes. This lasted about 3 months. We had sex and did all the other dirty things about twice a week. One day, after Shelby and I had amazing sex, she told me she was pregnant. I asked her how this could happen if she was taking pills. She told me she thought she missed a couple of days and got pregnant. She asked me what she should do. She wanted to keep the child. I just told her that we are getting married. She was delighted and had sex with me again. I couldn't believe I said that. I didn't really love her, but she was great in bed and is now pregnant with my child. So, at that time I was 44 years old, and I married a 22-year-old woman. I drew up a prenuptial agreement and made her sign it. We also agreed that she would not take my last name. She was too famous. I preferred that she stay with her last name. She had no problem with it, which seemed a little strange to me. We flew to Las Vegas and got married. I guess you could call it a honeymoon since we spent a week there. When we returned and my sisters found out about it, they were furious. "Damn, Randy, she's almost the same age as our kids," my sister Barb said. "Look, you wanted me to get married, and I got married. Now you're angry that she's not older. She's 22 and your kids are just teenagers," I replied. "You're our big brother, and you've always been so smart. We wanted you to marry someone." "Older, with a lot of wrinkles," I interrupted. "Okay, Randy, we'll try to accept her into the family, but it won't be easy." "Hey, Barb, she's a great lover." I laughed, and Barb slapped me. About 2 months after Shelby told me she was pregnant, I asked her why her belly wasn't showing. With tears in her eyes, she said that it was a false alarm and she was starting her women's days, but she was afraid to tell me. She was afraid that I would think that she tricked me into marrying her, which is probably true. One day, she asked me about our finances. Of course, she moved into my house, which was really nice, but not an estate. I didn't need anything more. I had a housekeeper who came twice a week and cleaned the house. I ate most of my meals out and was very happy with my lifestyle. I told Shelby I didn't want to change anything. I will pay all the bills, and since she wanted to keep her job, I told her that whatever she earns is her money to spend on herself. Sometimes I would give her a few $100s to spend on herself. She asked me about the prenuptial agreement. She said she never fully understood it, but she signed it because she loved me. I knew it was nonsense, but I didn't tell her about it. I explained the agreement to her. All our assets before marriage will remain unchanged. This meant that I could not claim anything that belonged to her in the event of a divorce, and vice versa. She didn't have anything, but I thought that was a good way to explain. Now she knew that in case of divorce, she would not get much. I told her that if I cheated on her or asked for a divorce, I would have to give her $500,000. Unless, of course, we are both unfaithful, and then nothing will happen. I saw her young mind at work. What a stupid young thing she was. It's a shame she was so stupid. If she had left things as they were, we could have continued like this. I enjoyed sex with her. Her body was great too, but all good things must come to an end. We had been married for about 6 months when she came home one day and said that some woman at work was delighted with me. In fact, she said that the woman had a crush on me and that I should meet her. How stupid can this excuse be? So you're saying this girl wants to have sex with me and you're okay with that? "Well, I guess if you want, I won't stop you," she replied. "What's in it for you? Is there some male colleague here?" "She's married, but she and her husband sometimes switch partners." "So, You'll have sex with her husband while I'm with his wife. Is that the game plan? Honey, only if you want. I thought we could go to dinner, and you can see if you want to continue. She's older, but a beautiful woman, she replied. Now I'm smart and own a number of companies. I'm good at reading people. So my now 22-year-old wife offers me another woman. She does all this for me, that's what she says. I knew this marriage wouldn't last, but the sex was good while it lasted. I decided to play with their plan and see how far they would go. I think the footmat has more common sense than my young wife. Okay, honey, you organize everything and we'll see how it goes. I smiled. I decided to make a couple of inquiries and find out what was going on. I contacted a friend at my wife's work and told him what I needed. It will only be a couple of days before I receive the information I need. I had the information within 2 days. My little wife was dating Chuck Woody. He was her manager, or if you like, boss. Records show he worked there for 5 years. My dear faithful wife worked there for 3 years. Looks like they were a hot couple even before she married me. Strange. I wonder if he was the married man who wanted to share his wife. According to reports, he has been divorced for 3 years. This is around the time my dear wife started working there. His ex-wife's name was April, and they had no children. Well, I'd hate to think how smart they would be. They, my wife and Chuck, were recently spotted together in the dining room several times. It wouldn't be strange since he was her boss, but it fit into the larger picture. I was surprised that he had a good work record. It looked like he might have been using Shelby, or maybe he really loved her. It was kind of a fun game in a weird way. We could call it, try to deceive your husband. I couldn't tell my sisters and brother about it until it was all over. Shelby came home that night all excited. She told me that June was my future female company. She was glad that I agreed to the date. We were planning to go out on Saturday evening. She asked if I could give her extra money to buy nice clothes and jewelry. I gave her $1,000, thinking that for that money she could find something beautiful. I asked June's husband's name, and she said his name was Chuck Woody. It will be interesting. I only had 1 day to gather all the information about June Woody. I thought the last name was a pseudonym. My sources responded quickly. Of course, there was no June Woody, but there was June Ross. She was 38 years old and had been with the company for almost 14 years. She was divorced for 10 years. Her ex-husband apparently skipped town and never paid child support. Reminds me of my father. According to her health insurance, she had 2 children, a son aged 16 and a daughter aged 12. Another good employee who never missed work. Her work reputation was impeccable. Why would she be involved in this mess? Shelby and I lived our own lives. We both left for work in the morning, and she always had her own things to do after work. I used to go to the gym and then have dinner somewhere. Sometimes Shelby would meet me, but most of the time we met at home. It didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that she was planning something and having an affair. So now we were going to go on a date on Saturday so she could set me up for $500,000. If she would just talk to me about divorce, I'd give her a couple, hundreds of thousands, and would have let her go if she just asked. She was going to try to get more, and it was a mistake. We went to a really fancy restaurant. I mean, the best. Lounge, orchestra, everything is top-notch. I think I was paying for it, so she chose a better place. As we walked in and the head waiter was about to seat us, I noticed a couple at a far table. There sat a completely mismatched couple. I knew that they would put us there. The woman looked nervous, but I had to admit she was gorgeous. I mean, she was a fantastically beautiful woman. She wore a low-cut dress that showed off her ample breasts. Her so-called husband was a nice guy, but clearly not on her level. He looked much younger. We were seated at a table and sat in alternating places. Shelby performed all the performances. I kissed June's hand and felt it tremble slightly. She was definitely nervous. We had a casual conversation, and every time I asked a question, I answered quickly. I won't mention all their false statements because I knew the truth. I just wanted to hear them lie. We decided to have a drink and dance before dinner. I looked at June and asked if she wanted to dance. She stood up, and I could see half of her thighs. She had the body of a real woman, not a teenager or a model. How to explain this? She was curvy, but not fat. Beautiful breasts, between which you could see a cleavage, buttocks that you wanted to grab. We headed to the dance floor. As we passed the orchestra, I gave the musicians $20 and asked them to play 4 slow songs in a row. They smiled and nodded at me. June and I were now away from our table and dancing. Shelby and Chuck sat and talked. I told June what a beautiful woman she was, and then tears came to her eyes. "I can't do this. I'm sorry, but I can't," she said. She started to retreat, but I held her tightly. "Can't you do what, June? Sleep with me?" I asked. "Yes, no, I don't know." "Not like that. Please let me go," she asked. "June, I know about those 2 idiots at the table trying to scam me out of $500,000. I don't worry about them. It won't happen. All I care about is why a beautiful woman like you would agree to participate in such a heinous act." "Sorry, that was stupid. I don't want to be a part of this. What will my kids think?" She looked at me because her so-called husband had just said that they didn't have children. "It's okay, June. I know you have 2 children. So why were you ready to sell yourself to these 2 idiots? Do they have something over you?" "Oh God, no. What have I done? I'm so sorry." She still had tears in her eyes. Chuck overheard me arguing with my daughter's dentist. She needs braces, and it will cost over $4,000. I don't have that money. My husband left me 10 years ago and has never paid child support. I make about $35,000 a year, and it all goes towards paying the bills. Chuck offered to give me $4,000 if I seduced you. I've never done anything like this, please believe me, but I did it for my children. I would do anything for it. Them. Now she was crying. I took out my handkerchief and gave it to her so she could wipe away her tears. "So you offered yourself to me for braces?" I asked. "I've known about you for several years. I saw you at a few parties and thought you were a nice man. I was always afraid to approach you, and of course you never approached me. I think we were from opposite sides of the street. Well, when they told me they wanted me to seduce you, I agreed. I now understand how stupid it was, and I'm really sorry. I thought about what it means to be on different sides of the street. I was the guy who dropped out of school and through hard work got to where I am today. It made me wonder if I was being overconfident. I needed to work on this. I didn't want people to think I was unavailable. I couldn't believe I missed out on such a wonderful woman. I think this is one of the problems of wealth. It makes you suspicious of most people. I didn't like it. I needed to work on this. I can't believe I didn't notice a beautiful woman like you," I said. "I guess it's the clothes. I can't afford these outfits. Shelby bought me this dress and sent me to the hairdresser. The jewelry is hers too. It's really nice to wear things like that. Before I left the house, my son even whistled at me. He thought I was just going on a date." "June, we need to go back to the table and talk, order dinner. I won't take advantage of you, I promise, but I want you to play by the rules. Can you do that for me?" "Yes, Randy, I'm so sorry. I'll help you in any way I can. I just couldn't do this to you. You're too good a person to be involved in this with these 2. Please forgive me for being unreasonable. I'm really not a bad person. I'm just stupid sometimes. We'll talk later, but for now I'll pester you. Believe me, if I weren't married, it wouldn't be hard to do," I smiled. We went back to the table, and I asked Shelby and Chuck how they were getting along. "Oh, we're just getting to know each other. At work, it's always about business. We rarely have time together at work," Chuck replied. "All I can say is that you have a beautiful wife. It's a shame you don't have kids. I think she would be a great mother. Sorry for that comment, but she has an amazing figure, and damn, her butt's strong," I said. June lowered her eyes and turned beet red. Of course, I didn't touch her, but we needed a little performance. "Oh, I'm sorry if I confused you, June, but I was under the impression that you do this a lot." Chuck replied, "We date couples sometimes, but June is still pretty shy." "I'm hungry after all this dancing. Let's order a bottle of champagne and call the waiter to order," I suggested. Shelby was a little puzzled. I think she didn't like that I was paying so much attention to June, even though that's what she wanted. We all drank a glass of champagne, and I proposed a toast to all of us and to a wonderful evening ahead. We clinked glasses and drank champagne. I extended my hand so Chuck could see me squeezing June's upper thigh. She looked at me in surprise and squeezed my hand in response. Damn, she felt good. I raised my hand with her hand on it and kissed it lightly. Let's order dinner at my expense. June, I heard they have great lobster tails. Would you like to try it? I asked. She said it would be nice, and I could order for the two of us. I asked Shelby what she wanted, and she ordered the shrimp set. Old Chuck ordered the most expensive steak on the menu. This was not a surprise. We were drinking our second bottle of champagne when the food arrived. One thing I can say, I have always tolerated alcohol well. June didn't drink much, so Chuck and Shelby were the main drinkers that evening. Shelby and Chuck had apparently already begun to relax. Chuck moved closer to her and placed his hand on her lap. While they were sitting there, I asked June to dance again. She stood up and we started dancing. She complimented me on my dancing skills. I asked her how her evening was. She replied that he was wonderful and she would like it to be a real date. I told her that this evening was a real date between us. Dinner, dancing, and socializing, it's all real. I also told her that there would be no sex because I was married and I thought it was wrong. I also added that after the divorce I might find her, and she just smiled and said, I'd like that. I asked her what the next step in their plan was, and she told me that they had reservations at the Holiday Inn and Chuck had set up cameras to record us having sex to get evidence of my cheating. I asked her when she was supposed to get paid, and she said she was given $500 up front and would get the rest when she gave them the tape. I was sure they weren't going to pay her any more, but we had to make a record. I found out the room numbers and returned to the table, excusing myself for a few minutes. I called my cousin Rob, who was the night manager at the Holiday Inn, and asked him to install a camera in the other room too. Both numbers were registered in my name, and I gave permission for the mini camera to be installed, so it was not illegal. Now we will both be recorded on video. I offered June one last dance before heading to the motel. She told me that while I was gone, Chuck and Shelby congratulated her on seducing me. They didn't know that was the plan. June, this is their plan. You are one beautiful woman, and it was an honor for me to have a date with you. I did not play with your feelings. Everything I told you was real. I did not pretend with you. Under different circumstances, I would have made love to you if you would let me. I leaned over and kissed. Well, it's time to start the show, I said, looking into June's almost watery eyes. We went back to the table, and I asked Shelby if she had made any other reservations since she had to organize everything. I've booked 2 rooms at the Holiday Inn if you'd like to continue. Of course, that's entirely up to you. Well, since we're both doing it, I guess it's okay. If it was just me, I'd have a problem with it. You know our prenuptial agreement. June is a wonderful woman, but I can have a lot of fun for $500,000. I smiled. Everyone laughed, but I wanted to let them know that I wasn't a complete idiot. I didn't want them to think their plan wasn't working. I could practically see the dollar signs in their eyes. They were watching me, so I guess they must have done something to let me know they were going to be intimate. Chuck hugged Shelby and smiled at me, so I did the same to June, and she turned around and kissed me. I knew she wasn't faking it. I told Shelby she could go with Chuck and June would go with me. I asked them for our room keys and saw them look at the keys to make sure I had the right one. We drove to the motel, and when we walked into the garage, I told Shelby I'd see her home in the morning. I hugged June, and we went to room 704. Shelby and Chuck were a couple doors down in 710. We walked into the room, and June looked at me. What are we going to do now? As much as I'd like to, we can't make love. Like you said, I'm not worth $500,000, she smiled. The video was turned on, but these devices have no sound. This made them much quieter and less noticeable. Rob, my cousin, said one camera is in the smoke detector, and the other is in the corner vent in the ceiling. Do you like to play solitaire? I asked, taking out a deck of cards. I'll teach you how to play solitaire for two. We need to stay here for at least an hour in case they come to check. Do you think you'll have problems at work when they find out they've been tricked? Probably. I don't work directly for Chuck, but I think they'll give me problems. I'm a big girl. I think I can handle it. What about braces? Your daughter still needs them. I'll try to borrow money or something. Everything will be fine. That's what my mom said, so I wouldn't worry. Why don't you go work somewhere else? You have a great work record, and I'm sure you can find a better place. How do you know so much about me? About my family, work, even my ex-marriage? I can't tell you this right now, but I know people who know other people. Allied Company is looking for a marketing specialist. Why don't you apply there on Monday? She smiled at me and said, "They say you have to know someone to get in. It's one of the best places to work in the area." I smiled back. "You know someone. You know me. Do you have a vacation from Marcus Company?" "Yes, I still have 2 weeks of vacation." "Why?" I took out one of my gold business cards and wrote on the back, "Margaret's replacement, Randy R." "So, I don't want you back at Marcus on Monday. Call them and tell them you're taking time off and give this card to the receptionist at Allied Company." "Got it." "Yeah, but..." "There are no buts. You have to trust me. Just do as I ask. Will you do it?" "Yes, I can," she replied. We ordered a bottle of wine for our room and talked and played solitaire for more than 3 hours. "Well, June, as much as I would love to lay you down on this bed and devour you, it's time for me to take you home. Are you ready?" We opened the door and quietly went out. As we walked past Shelby's room, we heard sounds of sex. Looks like they were still doing it. When we got to the service counter, I told Rob to give our tape to Shelby when he saw it in the morning, and leave the tape from their room, and I'd pick it up tomorrow. I took June home and told her it was one of the best dates I'd had in a long time. He reminded her of Monday, and then couldn't resist. He leaned over and kissed her goodbye. Many times. I walked her to the door and kissed her again. There were no cameras to worry about. She took off the jewelry Shelby lent her and asked me to return it, then disappeared into the house. I got into the car and drove home. I actually felt a little sad. June was a wonderful woman. Her life reminded me of my mother, who worked hard to take care of her children and make ends meet. I wanted to help make her life easier. Shelby came home Sunday morning and asked when I arrived. I said I came back last night. June wanted to go home, so I took her. "So, Shelby, how was your evening with Chuck?" "I prefer not to talk about it, if you don't mind," she answered. "Okay, as long as you don't ask me about my date, although June is a lovely lady and I don't understand why she would marry such an arrogant ass," I said to irritate Shelby a little. "What's wrong with Chuck? I think he's a really nice guy." "I don't think he's arrogant," Shelby replied. "I don't know exactly. There's something very fake about him. I can't pinpoint what it is, but I wouldn't trust him. He may be your boss, but he's still full of crap." Shelby looked at me angrily and said that she didn't feel well and was going to lie down. At about 7 in the evening, the phone rang. Shelby replied, "I only heard half the conversation, but I knew it was Chuck." "What? He's not? Nothing at all? Cards?" "No, he never said. He came back last night." Then in a low voice, she whispered, "Wait, I'll deal with this bitch tomorrow." "Hell no, I can't ask him anything. Then he'll know something's wrong." "Okay, we'll talk tomorrow. Yes, I love you too. Bye." "Who called?" I asked. "Chuck called and said he and June had a great time and thanked us for paying for everything. So how did things go between you and June?" "We've already discussed this. No comment, remember? It was your idea." "Oh, by the way, June said thank you for lending her these jewelry," I said, handing them over. "She said it was very nice of you. I think she considers you a real friend. Oh, I need to go out for a while. Do you want me to get anything?" I had to pick up my record of Shelby and Chuck from the motel. I wonder what I'll see on it. She wanted nothing more than for me to leave home. I think she needed to talk it over with Chuck. Things didn't go according to their plan. I chuckled as I got into the car and headed to get the recording. I received the recording and asked to use the room for a few minutes to check it out. I used their office and scrolled forward through many posts. They worked really hard. After resting, they seemed to do it again before heading home. At least they cleaned up after that. I went out and ate dinner while contemplating my next move. When I got home, Shelby was already in bed. I know this may seem strange, but we slept in separate rooms. I was used to sleeping alone, and that's how it was. The funny thing is that, looking back, Shelby didn't even ask questions about separate rooms. I guess she didn't want to sleep with an old man, or at least an older man. I got up and left the house before Shelby got out of the shower. I had a lot to do. I went to my office and started making calls. I had to drag a few people out of bed or out of the shower, but I didn't care. I called Marcus Company, Allied Company, and then my lawyers, making an appointment for that day. This morning I got up early, not knowing what to expect. I dressed in my best business suit and sent the kids off to school. I had to call Marcus Company and tell them that I would not be coming and would be taking a few days off. Randy didn't give me much explanation. I hope he's not playing with me. I really like him, and now my life is in his hands. At about 10 o'clock, I headed to the Allied Company. I always dreamed of working there. It's kind of a symbol of success in our community. I approached the receptionist. "How can I help?" she asked. "I came to apply for a vacancy." "Sorry, we're not hiring at the moment." I handed her the card Randy gave me. She read it and asked me to wait. She said it would only take a minute. I watched as she walked into the office and returned with a gentleman a couple of minutes later. He extended his hand to me. "Mrs. Ross, I presume?" he asked. "I'm George Peter, head of human resources." "Yes, I'm June Ross. Randy sent me here to apply for a job," I replied. Yes, Margaret is retiring and you are her replacement. Please follow me." Did he say that I was Margaret's replacement or that I was applying to take her place? I haven't even given him my resume yet. I followed him to another office, and he said it was nice to meet you and his secretary would handle my paperwork. Then he left me with the secretary. "Hi, June. I'm Audrey. Welcome to Allied Company. We need to go through all your legal paperwork and get everything straightened out. Would you mind filling out these forms?" She smiled. "Audrey, I came to apply for this position. There must have been a mistake. I haven't even interviewed yet," I said. "Sorry, June. I guess I thought you were in the know. When you received that card from Randy, it was as good as any interview. You got the position. After you fill out the paperwork, we'll discuss the details. You'll get started. Back to work tomorrow." Shouldn't I give Marcus Company 2 weeks' notice? It doesn't seem right to just leave them. They were a pretty good place to work. Marcus Company is a subsidiary of Allied Company. Most people don't know this. We are in charge, so to speak. Your records are already here. We just transferred them to our computer. You will retain all of your seniority and benefits, although some will be improved. We'll discuss that as well, so if you fill out the paperwork, we'll get started. That was incredible. I got the job and better benefits and didn't even have to interview. I wondered what my salary would be, but I was almost afraid to ask. I filled out the tax forms and gave them to Audrey. She really was a friendly girl. She offered me a cup of coffee and we both drank a cup. "June, I know you have 1,000 questions and I will try to answer them. I will tell you some important points and give you books and pamphlets so that you can read them at home. After we finish with the documents, I will guide you through the office and I'll introduce you to Margaret, the woman you'll be replacing. She's retiring next month after 30 years with us. It's a great position and you were very lucky to get it. Hopefully, I can replace Margaret. She seems like a really nice person. You can handle it or Randy wouldn't vouch for you. All I can say is that when Randy talks, people listen. It's simple. Now, I know you're wondering about your salary, but you were probably afraid to ask. You'll start at 60,000 in a year. What? 60,000 is almost twice what I earned, I replied. Don't tell anyone your salary here. It's taboo. This position was supposed to start at 50, but Randy said to give you credit for your 14 years at Marcus. Your insurance benefits are better here too, but I was instructed to tell you that braces for your daughter are a pre-existing condition, so they won't be covered. The good news is that here's a check for $4,000 as a bonus for accepting this position. Compliments from Randy for helping him. I started crying, and Audrey had tears in her eyes too. I think it's something like mothers. Audrey told me that she has 2 children who are now in their 20s and living on their own. They also needed braces as children. We completed our discussion and paperwork, and she took me on a tour of the building and all of the offices. We stopped at one of the offices, and she introduced me to Margaret. She was about 60, but she was very neat and cheerful. It will be interesting to work with her next month. She promised that she would teach me everything I needed to know. She congratulated me on getting the position, and then Audrey said it was time for lunch, and we headed to the cafeteria. The next day, I started my new job. It was almost like a new beginning for me and my children, thanks to Randy, a man I barely knew. I made all my calls to help June a little. It's still hard to believe the feelings I had for her. Damn it, I barely knew this woman, but I had to help her. Raising 2 children on a limited income in a single-parent family, I hated it. A child should have a chance in life. I have seen my mother cry too often as she tried to provide for us with everything we needed. I felt the same way when I was with June. I will do anything for my children. She didn't have to do everything herself, and now her life will be easier. I always liked helping good people, but I despised those who took advantage of others. Now I had to deal with this type of person. I watched the footage of them at the motel again. You could see from their actions that this wasn't their first time together, which wouldn't have mattered anyway. I knew from the moment she told me she wasn't pregnant that something was afoot. I made a copy of the recording and took it to my lawyers. I had several lawyers. They all agreed that the marriage issue could be quickly resolved with such evidence. After reviewing our prenuptial agreement, they asked if she had anything against me to countersue. I told them no, unless playing cards in a motel counted. I also told them about some of the touching and kissing they saw. Again, it was word against word and was not that serious. This did not rise to the level of treason specified in our agreement. They asked me about filing a lawsuit against 3 people who tried to cheat me out of money. I told my lawyers that they didn't have anything I needed and that I didn't want to mention the woman. If it weren't for her, I would never have known about the plan to take my money. Of course I knew, but I wanted to keep June and her family out of it. I told the lawyers that I wanted them to prepare the documents as soon as possible. I'll be back in a few hours to pick them up. When I returned to collect the documents, the lawyers said that I was acting very fairly under the circumstances. They said they could annul the marriage faster than going through divorce proceedings. I took both sets of documents and left the office. I did something I rarely do. I went to Marcus' company. Most people knew me by name, but few had seen me in person. I went to the reception and asked to meet with the president of the company. She tried to hold back her laughter and asked if I had an appointment. I don't always wear a suit and tie. I prefer casual style, and that's how I dressed. Nice polo shirt and Docker pants. I gave her one of my gold business cards, but she didn't understand its meaning. I suggest you take this card to him. I'm pretty sure he'll want to see me. Jim instructed Marla to call Chuck and Shelby to come to his office. He then left, saying he would be back in about an hour as he had 2 meetings. I thanked him for his time and told him I would remember the service he provided. Such statements meant a lot to me, and I always cared about the people who helped me. My reputation among the elite was important. Honesty with these people was paramount. I was sitting at Jim's table when Chuck and Shelby walked in. "Randy, what are you doing here?" Shelby asked. "Chuck, please close the door and both of you sit down." "Shelby, we have a problem, or at least a dilemma. You and your boyfriend tried to scam me out of money." "No, that's not true, Randy. Please give." please be quiet and let me continue. You'll have a chance to explain later. I know that you and Mr. Woody have been friends for many years. You tried to set me up and cheat me out of $500,000. You can't prove anything, Chuck said. You're bluffing. You can't prove anything, and if you divorce Shelby, we'll get half. You won't get anything. See, I have a video of you two at the motel. Chuck interrupted me. Nonsense, you had a recording room. I know. I arranged it. I turned on a videotape that showed Chuck and Shelby having sex. Where did you get this from? Chuck asked. Now do you think the court will believe my recording or the one you have, where we just play cards and drink wine? I asked. Shelby was getting nervous. I looked at her directly as I continued talking. Shelby, we can make this easy or very hard. My lawyers have drawn up several options. I can charge you with fraud, and we will all go to court and fight. Or we could. Chuck interrupted me again. You won't go to court. You don't like publicity. It will damage your image. You will never take us to court. Shut up. I'm tired of listening to your damn bullshit. You are sadly mistaken if you think that I won't take you to court and throw you in jail and won't lose a minute of sleep over it. Like I said, Shelby, we're getting a divorce. I think you understand this very well. We can use our prenuptial agreement, and you will leave with what you brought into the marriage, which is basically nothing. You can take back all your personal items that you bought and the gifts that I bought you. She sat in tears. I almost felt sorry for her. I looked at Chuck. Chuck, I was thinking of offering you $250,000 to move to West Virginia and work there. What? To me? $250,000? Of course I'll take it. There is one condition. Shelby will stay here. Do you still want to go? Of course, I'll take the money and leave, Chuck said, smiling. Shelby looked at Chuck. What about us, Chuck? You said you loved me. You told me to marry Randy and then tried to deceive him. It was business, baby. It was fun while it lasted. We had good sex, but we're talking about $250,000. Sorry, baby, but it was just business. Where to sign? I wanted Shelby to understand what a jerk Chuck is. What do you think of your lover now, Shelby? I hate that bastard. He only used me. He arranged all this, and I am left with nothing, and he gets the money. It's just not fair. Shelby, you were my wife, even if only for a short time. I have a counteroffer for you. Instead of giving the job in West Virginia to Chuck, I'll give it to you along with the money. There are just a couple of conditions. You can't go with Chuck, and you have to sign an annulment that says our marriage never existed. The choice is yours. I got a job, $250,000, and all my stuff. What about my BMW? You can leave him too. When you sign these papers, our marriage will be considered non-existent. I personally rent a moving van to transport all your belongings to West Virginia. Chuck shouted, What about me? What will I get? You keep your job here. If we ever hear you try something like that again, you'll go to jail or end up dead. If we ever hear you spreading rumors about Shelby, June, or me, you'll be out on the street. Now I suggest you get back to work. Oh, wait a minute. I called Marla and asked her to send Bruce to the office. Shelby, go home and pack your things. Consider yourself very lucky. Instead of jail or nothing, you get another chance. And don't be associated with a loser. You have a chance to start again. Now go and live your life. You have a second chance. She looked at Chuck. You damn bastard, I never want to see you again, she said as she left the office. A giant walked in, about 6 inches and 325 pounds. Chuck, I think you've already seen Bruce. He's the head security guard for Marcus Company. He's tasked with keeping an eye on you to make sure you don't cause any trouble. If you do, he has orders to deal with it. I hope this won't be necessary. Thanks for coming, Bruce, I said. No problem, sir. You're welcome, he replied, leaving the office. One last thing, Chuck. I wanted to kick you out, but Jim saved your ass. Make sure you do a great job here so Jim doesn't regret his decision. By the way, you would never get the money. I just wanted Shelby to see what kind of person you are. Now I suggest you get back to work. When Jim returned, I told him everything that had happened and suggested that we invite him and his wife to dinner. He agreed, and we met a few hours later. I made an order from the restaurant Shelby used. I liked their lobster. Jim and his wife were good people. I like doing things for good people. During dinner, I thought about June. It would be nice if she were with me. After dinner, I headed home. Shelby packed her things and left before I even got home. I left the check for her on the table. I ended up giving her $300,000. Most people would probably think I was crazy for giving her anything, but I wanted her to try to change her life. A month later, the annulment was completed. I contacted Jim at Marcus's company, and he said that Shelby had settled in and that her management was impressed with her. I think her looks mattered a lot, but at least she was doing well. That was the last I heard of her. Jim said Chuck does a good job. Every time Bruce walked around the area and smiled at him, he looked nervous. It seemed like everything could get better. It was time to face the truth. I went to Barb's sister's house. She was throwing a birthday party for my 14-year-old niece. My other sister Brenda was there with her family, as well as my brother Joe and his family. I was the only one who was not married or had children now, but I was a good uncle. Barb looked at me and asked, "Where is your little? Excuse me, where is Shelby?" We were not together anymore. Our marriage was annulled. This happened last week. I didn't go into details, didn't want to involve June. Brenda said, "Wise decision, brother." We invited Shelby to every family event, and she never showed up. It seemed like she really didn't want to be part of the family. Where did she go? She transferred to the West Virginia office. I think it was a good move for her. "How much did it cost you, Randy?" Joe asked. "I gave her some money for travel and to start a new life." "The amount is not important," I replied. Brenda asked if I would go to her husband's 40th birthday, which was in 2 months. I said I wouldn't miss it for anything. They were having a big pool party and barbecue. They said I could bring a companion if she was an adult. I told them my life with Shelby was over, so they could find something else to tease me about. Barb mentioned that her daughter Sherry needs to have her tonsils removed on Friday. She asked if it would be okay for me to come and sit with her while the surgery was going on. Her husband was a truck driver and would be on the road. He was going to take the day off, but she convinced him that having his tonsils removed wasn't that bad. I promised that I would be there. On Friday, I went to the hospital. My niece was being prepared for surgery. I told her everything would be fine, and I would buy her a gallon of ice cream, whatever she wanted, but no nuts. "Thank you, Uncle Randy. You know I love chocolate." "So it will be chocolate," I answered. Barb and I walked out to the waiting room. We had to spend about 2 hours there, including recovery time. While we were sitting and talking, I saw a young guy being brought in. He was in a car accident. Behind him, hurrying along the corridor, was a woman. It was June. I jumped up and approached her. "June, what happened?" Of course, she was nervous. "My son Barry had an accident. God, I hope he's okay. He's a new driver, only 16, and he swerved to avoid hitting the dog and ended up in a ditch. I know he injured his leg. Paramedics said they won't know how serious it is until they take x-rays. Randy, I need to thank you for everything you've done for me, but now is not the time. Sorry, I have to find out about my son's condition." She quickly went to her son's room. It was so nice to see her. It's a pity that circumstances did not allow us to talk. I really hoped that her son would be okay. He looked more scared than anything else. I needed to get back to Barb. "Who was that?" Barb asked. "A woman I know. Her son has just been in an accident. It seems he injured his leg. I think he'll be fine." "I think I'll check on him before I go," I replied. Barb and I talked about various topics until Sherry came out of the ER. We went to her. She looked sleepy from the medication. They brought her ice cream to cool her throat. When she was ready to leave, I gave her $20 for the chocolate ice cream I promised. She whispered thank you, and I kissed her forehead. I decided to see if June was still there and went to Barry's room. Barry sat and watched TV. "Hello, Barry. My name is Randy. I'm your mom's friend. Sorry, sir, she's back at work. She won't be here for another couple of hours, he said. How is your leg? I asked. The doctor said that I was lucky. It was just a sprain. Everything will be fine in a few days. Everything else is just scratches and cuts. So you're going home today. The doctor said he would leave me until the morning. I've been given a lot of medications, and they want to make sure I don't have a reaction to them. I'll tell Mom you came by. That was nice of you. I gave him one of my business cards with my personal cell phone number. Barry, give this card to your mom and ask her to call me, I asked. Sir, what is this about? Sorry, but this is my mother, and I'm trying to look after her. I smiled. He reminded me of me at his age, always took care of his mother. Barry, your mom and I are friends, and I'd like to ask her out. I don't know your phone number and would consider it rude to just show up. If she is dating someone, I will understand and will not bother her. Sir, you seem like a good person, but my mother really doesn't date many people. You may be wasting your time. Why is that, Barry? There is one guy who my mother likes, and she is waiting for him to call. I don't know him or why she's waiting, but she's turned down a lot of dates. I thought I should tell you this and maybe save you some time. Is the guy she's waiting for the one she went out with 2 months ago when you whistled at her? How did you find out? Mom must have told you. Are you that guy? Yes, it's me, Barry. Now will you give her my card? I asked. Of course, sir, and thank you for visiting me. I was sitting at home reading the newspaper when the phone rang. Hi, this is Randy, I replied. Randy, this is June. My son gave me your card and said that I should call you. What could it be that couldn't wait until tomorrow? Where are you calling from? From the hospital. Barry said to call right away. Are you all right? I started laughing. June, I just asked Barry to tell you to call me honestly. I just wanted to ask you out on a date. June said she looked at Barry and he sat there dying of laughter. I could hear him laughing through the phone. You little prankster told me it was urgent, I heard her say to Barry. Mom, I know you're crazy about this guy, and I didn't want him to slip away. Besides, if I stay the night at the hospital and my sister is at Grandma's, you can go and have a good time. I heard her whisper. He didn't say anything about tonight. Perhaps he means sometime in the future. He's quite an important person. I don't think he'll just drop everything to ask me out, she told Barry, who continued to laugh. Hello, hello. Is anyone there? I said, knowing that June was holding the phone in her hand. Sorry, Randy. I think I made a fool of myself, thanks to my son sitting there laughing. I heard everything, and tonight will be wonderful. Will you go on a date with me today? I'll pick you up at the hospital in an hour. Randy, I'm not dressed. Are you standing there naked? Of course not. Shut up, Barry, and stop laughing. I'm wearing jeans and a blouse, Randy. And a bra and maybe panties, I heard my son shout in the background. You are dressed perfectly. I want to go to a country music place where you can line dance and just have fun. Will it do? Yes, I'll try to be ready in an hour if my dear son stops teasing me. I picked her up from the hospital and we went to a cozy place with country music. We were having a great time. We didn't even drink alcohol. We drank fancy bottled water. We ordered a portion of ribs and just enjoyed each other's company. She thanked me so many times for helping me get her new job that I finally had to tell her to stop talking about it or I'd get old George to fire her. She came over and kissed me. What is this for? I asked. I can't say, otherwise I'll lose my job. She smiled. Randy, why did you want to come here today? I never thought you loved places like this. Don't you like it here? I like the rhythm of the music and something else, I answered. I really like it here. I'm just happy to be with you. What is this something? She asked. You might be angry if I tell you, I said. You just wanted to see my big butt in jeans dancing in a line, didn't you? She asked. God, how did you know? Sorry, but you're right, I replied. I was watching you while other women were dancing, so I thought you were doing the same thing when my big butt was on the dance floor. She laughed. Well, does my ass satisfy you? She laughed again. Very. I'm starting to get attached to you. I don't know where this will lead, but I want to follow my heart. I don't trust people in general, but there's something special about you. She picked up Barry the next day, and when she returned home, her daughter Kayla was there with her grandmother to meet Barry. I pulled up as they were getting ready to pull Barry out of the car. "Let me help," I said, walking over and helping Barry out of the car. I knew he needed to stay off the leg, and he was a pretty big guy. "Hi, Randy. Good to see you again. It's nice that you came to see me, but I'm willing to bet that you didn't come because of me," he smiled. I helped him out of the car while June explained to her daughter and mom who I was. Barry needed to rest his leg for a few days. He said he was in pain from the accident, but would be fine soon. After I helped him into the house, I went back to the car and got 2 pizzas and 12 bottles of soda. June introduced me to her mom and daughter, and we sat and talked. They were a really close family and made me feel very welcome. I looked at Kayla and she smiled, showing off her braces. This made me very happy. After that day, I saw June every few days. I got along great with her children. Barry recovered quickly. The youth seemed to be healing quickly. He still needed to be careful, but he was ready to resume football practice. He told me he wanted to be a defensive lineman. He said he's not very good at handling the ball, but defense is his thing. I told him I knew someone who could give him good advice on playing as a lineman. I mentioned that my brother Joe got a scholarship playing that position. Barry said he couldn't wait to meet him. June and I were planning to go out again next Saturday. We decided to go to the country bar again. We were having a great time when I got up to use the restroom. When I returned to the table, I saw Chuck in my seat, arguing with June. I heard him say that she set him up and robbed him of $500,000. June called him a couple of names. When she reached out to hit him, he grabbed her arm. I was furious. I walked over and pulled him out from behind the table with my hand behind his back and walked him out the side door and threw him out into the street. "You son of a bitch, you can't leave everything alone. If I see you again, I'll kill you," I said. When I returned inside, the crowd cheered. June was a little scared and asked to leave. As we walked out the back door, she said she had something to tell me. But just as she was about to speak, I was attacked by 3 men, one of whom was Chuck. I heard June scream as several people from the bar ran outside. A fight broke out. It looked like a general brawl when the shot was fired. The next thing I remember is waking up in a hospital room. My sister Barb was sitting next to me. He woke up. "Randy woke up," she cried, tears in her eyes. My sister Brenda and my mother came in. There were many of my friends and relatives in the waiting room. What happened to me? Where is June? Someone please explain to me what happened. The doctor asked everyone to leave so he could examine me. "Randy, you were shot 3 times. 1 bullet passed a few millimeters from the heart. You lost a lot of blood and were in a coma for almost a week. It was very close whether you managed to survive or not. It's good that you're in good physical shape, otherwise you wouldn't have made it through." "Where is June? Who hurt me?" I asked. "I don't know the woman you're talking about, and the police are still investigating who shot you. You were the only one who was injured. Now you need to rest to recover. I'll give you something to help you sleep, and you can talk to your family later. Now you need to sleep." He gave me an injection, and I passed out. The next morning I woke up, and my mother was there. "Mom, I need answers. I need to know what happened. I think some guy named Chuck or one of his friends hurt me. I need to talk to June. She was with me at that moment." "Have you seen her?" I asked. "Randy, you need to calm down. I'll tell you everything I know. The young woman was with you when you were brought in. I didn't know her name. Perhaps it was June. You can ask Barb later. She was talking to her. The woman was really scared, but as soon as our family arrived, she left. We haven't seen her since you were hospitalized. Some of our family were here all day and all night. Every day there were many calls asking about you. Honestly, I don't know if she called." "What do the doctors say, Mom?" I knew that my mother would tell me the truth. "They didn't think you would survive. The woman you called June put you in a car and took you to the hospital. She pressed her jacket against your chest to slow the bleeding. She didn't wait for an ambulance. And she did the right thing. According to doctors, if you lost another pint of blood, you wouldn't survive. So you can say that this unknown woman saved your life. The doctors came in smiling. Randy, it looks like you'll survive. In fact, you get better almost by the hour. You can be discharged from the hospital in a week. Do you feel ready to talk to the police? They are waiting outside to talk to you. Of course I'll talk to them, but I want to talk to Barb first. Please ask her to come in. Barb and Brenda walked in together. Hello, brother. How are you? You scared us all. They began to cry. I also had tears in my eyes, knowing that my sisters were crying for me. You two stop crying. I'm not dead yet. It's just because we love you so much, big brother, and we were very worried. Barb, Mom said you talked to June. What can you tell me? Well, she was covered in your blood and was in the waiting room when we arrived. She told me that you had been shot and you probably wouldn't survive. She cried all the time. She said that if you ever come to your senses, tell her that she is very sorry and loves you. Who is she, Randy? Is this the woman whose son we saw when he got into an accident that day? Yes, that's her. We were on a date. She was special to me. Has anyone seen her since I was shot? No, the police spoke to her separately, but she never returned. We thought about trying to find her, but we wanted to talk to you first. Of course, you were too busy sleeping for a week, Brenda laughed. Thank you for being here and taking care of me. I couldn't have asked for two better sisters. The police are probably already nervous. Better let them in. I also have questions for them. My sisters kissed me, and as soon as they left, two uniformed officers entered the room. Mr. Ryan, let's not beat around the bush. We've learned that you're a very important person, and we don't just mean trucking. We have many answers to what happened, and we will tell you everything we know, but first you must tell us everything you remember, one of the officers asked. It's still a little foggy, but I'll try. I was on a date with a friend. Is this friend June Ross, Mr. Ryan? Yes, it is. We were dancing, and I needed to go to the toilet. When I returned, Chuck Woody was arguing with her. I remember throwing him out of the bar. June was upset about something and asked to leave. When we were leaving, I was attacked, it seems, by three men. Everything happened so quickly. I think I heard June scream, and everyone in the bar had to join in the brawl. I think I heard a shot, and the next thing I remember was waking up here yesterday. Anything else? Do you remember anything else? Excuse me, officer. Wait, when we were leaving, June said that she had to tell me something. She didn't have time to tell me this before I was attacked. Now, will you tell me what's going on? Mr. Ryan, 3 times you were shot down at close range from small caliber weapons. We have weapons. It was left at the crime scene. We're not sure who did the shooting, but it's registered to J. Ross. June shot at me? No, it is impossible. She couldn't do it. Mr. Ryan, this was J. Arthur Ross, June's ex-husband. According to June's testimony, he came to their home a few days ago and demanded money. He told her that Chuck Woody had contacted him and said that she was now rich or soon would be. She told us you might be rich, but she's not. We think this is what she wanted to tell you before you were attacked. We think she now feels responsible for your injury. If you had not interfered in her life, none of this would have happened. The truth is that she saved your life. Your heart stopped twice when you were first brought in. You've lost too much blood. Did you catch this, Ross and Woody? I don't want them to threaten June or her family. That won't happen, Mr. Ryan. You see, they both turned up dead yesterday. The third person involved came to us for protection. They called him and said he was next. He was told where the other two were killed, and he could go there to check it out. He called us instead. His name is Jason Alexander. Have you heard of him? No, it seems there is an actor with that name, but I don't know him. That's our dilemma, Mr. Ryan. Very few people know about this murder. We don't have any traces. It looked professional. Do you have any idea who might have done this? Gentlemen, I have absolutely no assumptions. Honestly, I can't say I'm sorry. At least taxpayers won't have to pay for their room and board for the next 20 years. What about this Alexander? Does he know anything? No, he came to town with Ross, but he's just a performer. We have assault charges against him, but he didn't know about the gun, so we're not sure what to do with it. If you hear anything, please call us, and if possible, keep information about the murders secret. We haven't told the press yet. The officers left, and I began to think. I had a slight idea who might be responsible, but I wouldn't give away who did it to me. I needed to contact June. She must feel responsible for my injury. I asked my brother Joe, and he came into my room. Hello, Randy. Damn, it's so nice to see you. You really scared us, brother. Joe, I need a favor. Anything, Randy. You're my big brother. I always obey you, he laughed. Joe, I need you to go see June. This is the woman who brought me to the hospital. Joe, don't tell our sisters, but I'm in love with her. She considers herself responsible for my injury. I explained to him about her ex-husband and Chuck. I didn't tell him they were killed, but I told him they were caught. Joe, bring her to me, even if you have to kidnap her. By the way, buy a professional soccer ball and sign it for her son. He wants to be a quarterback in school. Anything for you, Randy. I'm glad I can return a small favor for everything you've done for me. I'll go get her today. I'm Joe, Randy's little brother. Randy sacrificed for us our entire lives. He was almost like a father, although there was only a few years difference between us. He always protected us. He doesn't know that the twins and I know about his influence. When he snaps his fingers, many people obey. He got everyone we know a job. Nice work, too. He never boasted about it. You could say he was my hero. We all knew he made a mistake by marrying this very young girl, but we also knew he would protect himself. I remember telling my wife when she mentioned Shelby, leave Randy alone. So he gets some sex from a young girl, but so what? Katie, my wife, didn't talk to me for a week, but she knew I was right. I stopped at a sports store and bought a soccer ball and a signing pen. I wonder if this guy knew I played football. I found the house, and this teenager came to the door. How can I help? He asked. Are you Barry Ross? I asked. Yes, sir. What can I do for you? I was told to give you this soccer ball and sign it. My brother sent it to me. I took a pen and wrote on the ball, to Barry Ross from Joe Ryan, good luck in your football career. Barry looked at the autograph. Are you Joe Ryan, that famous defender? When I was very little, I heard how good you were. I watched recordings of your games. You are the reason I became an advocate. Is Randy your brother? At that moment, a beautiful woman approached Barry. Who is it, Barry? Mom, this is Randy's brother. He's Joe Ryan, that famous defenseman from the championship team some 18 years ago. His photograph hangs in the school and college hall of fame. The woman looked nervous. How's Randy? I called the hospital, and they told me that he had come out of his coma. I understand you are June. Randy has been asking about you since he woke up. He wants to see you. I cannot go. I feel guilty for saving his life. This is what you are guilty of. If you had waited for an ambulance, he would have died. So, June, I'm only going to say this once, so please listen. Randy is my big brother, and I would do anything for him. He told me to come and pick you up and bring you to the hospital immediately. He also told me that he is in love with you. He has never told me this about any woman in his entire life. Will you come with me, or will I have to kidnap you? June was crying. Please give me a minute to straighten myself out. I don't want him to see me like this. Please come in while I change. I stopped by and talked to Barry about the state team and why I didn't go pro. I broke my leg my senior year of college and decided not to play football for my life. June returned to the room. She looked great. I immediately knew what Randy saw in her. I took her to the hospital and walked her past everyone waiting to see Randy. As I walked past Barb and Brenda, they realized, as did I, that this was Randy's woman. I saw June enter the room. She cried as she approached me. Randy, I didn't have time to tell you about my ex's arrival. I am very sorry. You know I've always loved you. I just couldn't see you in a coma for which I felt responsible. I prayed for you every day. I called almost every 4 hours, hoping that you would wake up. God, I missed you so much. I'll be discharged in about a week. I have a problem. The doctor said I needed someone to be with me in the evenings. Can you come by sometimes? I'll come every night if necessary. In that case, maybe it's better for us to get married. If you stay in my house, I want you in my bed. Would you mind being Mrs. Rhine? I don't mind at all. She actually came every night after work to see me for a few hours. I felt great. I started going to physical therapy and rebuilding my muscles. We actually got married about 3 months later. June said the kids were happy for us. They all moved into my house. Kayla came with June to make the house more feminine. When they decorated it, I couldn't believe how much better it looked. It was no longer just a house. It became a real home. We went for Brenda's husband's birthday. Of course, June, Barry, and Kayla came too. Everyone was swimming and having a great time. My sisters loved June. They came to me and told me to propose to her in front of the whole family. I told them that I had already made an offer, but they said that it was not an offer. It was more like a dying confession. June did not get into the water, but stood at the edge of the pool in a swimsuit. It was a one-piece swimsuit, but she looked great. I came up behind her and hugged her. "Randy, what are you doing? You better not throw me into the water." She grabbed me by the neck. "If I fall, you will come with me." She held tightly to my neck. I picked her up. She was still holding my neck. "Randy, your heart, you better let me go." "June, my heart has never felt better. With my entire family as witnesses, will you be my wife for the rest of my life?" "I will, God, I will." She started crying when I jumped into the water, holding her in my arms. When we surfaced, I kissed her and hugged her tightly. Everyone applauded and shouted. Barry said, "Well done, Randy. Well done, Mom." The story of Chuck and Jay. Ross finally made it into the newspapers. It was a little tough for Kayla and Barry. Their father, whom they barely knew, tried to kill me. We talked to the kids and told them that if they needed therapy or someone to talk to, they should tell us. Police never found who killed the two men. Our wedding was a grand event. It was attended by the presidents of all companies in the city. Relatives came out from all corners. I told June we were millionaires. She eventually quit her job and became my secretary. We traveled often and eventually bought a big house. I considered Kayla and Barry my children. Sometimes they called me Dad, sometimes Randy. I left it up to them to choose. I signed a prenuptial agreement with June. She didn't even want to read it. She just signed it. It was a very simple agreement. If she leaves me for any reason, she will receive $5 million. We were both sure that we would never need this agreement. My friend Bruce was the security officer at the wedding. He came up to me and said, "Congratulations, sir. I wish you and your wife the best life possible." I handed him a briefcase and an envelope with one of my gold cards, the words, "Thank you," and $100,000. "Bruce, you are a true friend." On our wedding night, I brought June back to the Holiday Inn, room 704. We made love all night. This morning, when I got out of the shower, I saw June crying. She cried with joy. I left her a check on the nightstand along with one of my gold cards. The card read, "To my beloved wife on our wedding night, here's my wedding gift for your first purchase as Mrs. Rhine. With love, always yours, Randy." The check was for $500,000. I wanted her to know that she was always worth it. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.